Admiral Kyung-ho felt his stomach drop as he stared at the massive holographic screen floating in front of him. The blue light from the display made his face look ghostly pale. Just hours ago, that screen had shown 10,000 red dots moving toward Earth like a swarm of deadly insects. Now there was nothing but empty black space. "Run the scan again," he whispered to his crew, his voice barely audible in the silent command center. The technician's fingers danced across the control panel. Green lines swept across the display, searching every corner of the Sol system. Still nothing, not even a tiny piece of metal floating in space. Commander So-min walked up beside him, her boots clicking on the metal floor. She had fought against human forces before in small border conflicts. "Those Earth people can barely get their ships to the next planet," she said, shaking her head. "Their fastest rockets take months to reach Mars. How could they destroy the most powerful fleet in the galaxy?" The Draconian Armada wasn't just any fleet. These weren't cargo ships or passenger vessels. Each ship was the size of a small city, covered in thick armor that could stop nuclear bombs. Their weapons could turn entire planets into glowing dust. Just 6 months ago, Kyung-ho had watched from a safe distance as the same fleet attacked the Centauri colonies. The battle lasted less than an hour. 3 billion people died that day. "Maybe they ran into some kind of space storm," suggested Lieutenant Dae-ho from his station near the back of the room. "Space storms don't make entire fleets disappear," So-min replied, her voice getting louder with frustration. "And they definitely don't leave zero evidence behind." Meanwhile, millions of miles away on Earth, Dr. Jiwoo was having a very different kind of morning. She sat in her small office in Seoul, sipping coffee from her favorite blue mug, the same mug she had used every morning for 3 years. Through her window, she could see people walking to work, completely unaware that the deadliest military force in known space had just tried to invade their planet. Her computer screens showed normal Earth things: weather patterns over the Pacific Ocean, air pollution levels in major cities, the migration routes of whales in the North Atlantic. Nothing that looked like it could stop a space invasion. Her communicator made a soft beeping sound. She glanced at the small device sitting next to her keyboard. The message was short and simple: Protocol 7 complete, fleet relocated. Jiwoo took another sip of coffee and typed a quick response. "Understood. Any complications?" "Negative. Standard parameters." Maintained, observers unaware. She opened her daily log file and typed, "Day 1, 247 of current assignment. Morning routine normal. One minor security event resolved automatically. Coffee supply running low. Must remember to buy more." Then she closed the file and went back to watching whale migration patterns, as if making an entire alien war fleet disappear was just another boring part of her job. Back in space, Admiral Kyung-ho was getting desperate. He had sent probe ships to search the area where the Draconian fleet should have been. The probes found absolutely nothing unusual. No radiation, no heat signatures, no debris fields. It was like 10,000 massive warships had simply been erased from reality. "Sir," called out Ensign Haewon from the communications station, "I'm picking up normal radio transmissions from Earth. Music, news broadcasts, something called a weather report." "Play it," Kyung-ho ordered. A human voice filled the command center, speaking in English. "Good morning, Seoul. It's a beautiful sunny day with temperatures reaching 22 degrees. Traffic is light on most highways, and the cherry blossoms in Uedo Park are in full bloom. Perfect weather for a picnic." The alien crew looked at each other in confusion. These humans were talking about flowers and picnics, while the most feared military force in the galaxy had just vanished near their planet. Commander So-min crossed her arms. "Either these humans are incredibly brave, or they have no idea what just happened. Or," said Kyung-ho quietly, a chill running down his spine, "they know exactly what happened, and they're not worried about it at all." The thought terrified him more than any enemy fleet ever could. Captain Tae-hyun had seen many battlefields in his 30 years of military service. Shattered planets with glass craters where cities once stood, asteroid fields filled with twisted metal from destroyed ships, space graveyards that stretched for millions of miles, glowing with leftover radiation from massive battles. But this was different. This was wrong. His investigation fleet of 12 ships approached the Sol system slowly, sensors scanning every inch of space. They expected to find something horrible. Maybe pieces of Earth floating in chunks. Maybe the planet turned to ash and rock. At the very least, they thought they would find debris from the Draconian fleet scattered across the solar system like cosmic garbage. Instead, they found the most peaceful corner of space they had ever seen. "Captain," called out Navigation Officer Yu Jin from her station, "scans show no battle damage anywhere in the system. Mars looks normal. Earth's moon has the same old craters it's had for millions of years. Even the space junk around Earth is exactly where our old chart said it would be." Taehyun rubbed his forehead. "That makes no sense. 10,000 warships don't just disappear without leaving a mark." Lieutenant Hyejin floated near the main display screen, her 3 purple eyes moving independently as she studied the data streaming across multiple monitors. Her species had evolved in zero gravity, making her perfect for space operations. Right now, all 3 of her eyes were focused on readings that hurt her brain to look at. "Captain, these energy readings are impossible," she said, her voice tight with confusion. "I'm seeing quantum fluctuations that violate basic physics. There are dimensional cracks opening and closing faster than our instruments can track them. It's like reality itself is flickering." "Show me," Taehyun ordered. The main screen filled with swirling patterns of color that seemed to move even when they should be standing still. Numbers scrolled past faster than anyone could read them. Warning lights blinked across multiple control panels. "Every time we get close to measuring something strange, it disappears," Hyejin explained. "It's like someone is playing hide-and-seek with our scanners." Science Officer Dongwoo looked up from his analysis station. "Captain, I've never seen readings like this. These dimensional rifts shouldn't be possible with current technology. The amount of energy needed to create them would require the output of an entire star." "And the humans did this?" Taehyun asked. "That's just it, sir. Look at Earth's orbital defenses." The screen switched to show Earth surrounded by a few small space stations and some ancient-looking satellites. Compared to the massive defense platforms around most civilized worlds, Earth looked like it was protected by children's toys. "Those platforms couldn't stop a single scout ship, let alone the Draconian armada," Dongwoo continued. "Their weapons are centuries behind our technology. Most of their satellites look like they're held together with metal tape and hope." Far below them, hidden beneath the busy streets of Seoul, Dr. Min-soo sat in a room that didn't officially exist. The elevator that brought him here required a special key card that only 12 people on Earth possessed. The walls were lined with screens showing data that would have made Lieutenant Hyejin's 3 eyes roll back in her head from sheer overload. Min-soo watched the alien investigation fleet probe around the Sol system like ants trying to understand. A computer. Their scanners were impressive for their level of development, but they were only seeing the very surface of what was really there. "They're getting closer to finding the 3rd-dimensional barrier," he reported to his supervisor, a bald woman whose face was hidden in shadows at the far end of the room. "Their quantum scanners are starting to detect the edge frequencies." "How much longer until they break through?" the supervisor asked. "At their current rate of progress, about 6 hours, maybe less if they get lucky." The supervisor was quiet for a moment, considering their options. "Let them probe for another hour. It's good to see how far their technology has advanced, but don't let them get too close to the real systems." Min-soo nodded and turned back to his screens. He watched the alien ships move around like confused fish in a bowl, trying to solve a mystery that was so far beyond their understanding that they didn't even know what questions to ask. One of his screens showed Captain Taehyun pacing back and forth on his ship's bridge, clearly frustrated. Min-soo almost felt sorry for him. The captain seemed like a decent person just trying to do his job, but some secrets were too dangerous to share, especially with species that still solved their problems by blowing things up. "Beginning minor adjustments to camouflage parameters," Min-soo reported. "They'll find some interesting readings, but nothing that will lead them to the truth." The supervisor nodded approvingly. "Good. Let them think they're making progress." The radio message came through on a frequency so old that most ships didn't even monitor it anymore. Captain Taehyun had to dig through his communication system's archives to find the right channel. When he finally heard the transmission, he couldn't believe how casual it sounded. Unknown vessels currently investigating our solar system. You are cordially invited to land at the coordinates we are transmitting. We have prepared refreshments and would appreciate the opportunity for discussion. Please don't worry about weapons or defensive systems. They won't be necessary. The voice was calm and friendly, like someone inviting neighbors over for dinner. It was completely wrong for the situation. Commander So-min listened to the message 3 times before she could process what she was hearing. They're inviting us for refreshments. An entire armada just vanished and they want to serve us snacks. Maybe it's a trap, suggested Lieutenant Haijin, all 3 of her eyes blinking nervously. What kind of trap involves refreshments? Tae-hyun asked. He stared out the viewport at Earth spinning peacefully below them. City lights twinkled on the dark side of the planet like scattered diamonds. Everything looked so normal, so innocent. After 2 hours of debate, they decided to send a small delegation down to the surface. Commander So-min volunteered to lead the team, along with Captain Tae-hyun and 3 security officers. They expected to land in some primitive military facility, surrounded by crude weapons and desperate soldiers. Instead, their shuttle touched down on a landing pad next to what looked like a university campus. Trees lined perfectly maintained walkways. Students walked between buildings carrying books and coffee cups, glancing curiously at the alien shuttle but not seeming particularly excited or afraid. "This is not what I expected," So-min muttered. As they walked toward the main building, Dr. Yoon-soo was waiting for them in the lobby, wearing a simple blue dress and comfortable walking shoes. She looked like she could be anyone's grandmother, the kind of person who would bake cookies for her neighbors and remember everyone's birthday. "Welcome to Earth," she said warmly, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. "I'm Dr. Yoon-soo. Thank you for accepting our invitation." So-min shook the offered hand cautiously. The human's grip was firm but gentle, and her skin felt warm and completely normal. No hidden weapons, no suspicious technology. They followed Dr. Yoon-soo through hallways lined with windows that looked out onto gardens and courtyards. Students and faculty members nodded politely as they passed. Everything felt so ordinary that it made the hair on So-min's neck stand up. The meeting room was on the 3rd floor, with a large window overlooking a pond where ducks swam in lazy circles. Dr. Yoon-soo gestured for them to sit at a comfortable table while she prepared tea using a simple electric kettle. "I hope green tea is acceptable," she said, setting out cups and small plates of cookies. "We also have coffee if you prefer." Captain Tae-hyun couldn't take it anymore. "Where is the Draconian fleet?" he demanded, his voice echoing off the quiet. War's Dr. Yoon-soo didn't even pause in pouring the tea. "Oh, you mean the recent visitors? They encountered our standard safety protocols, I'm afraid. Nothing personal against them specifically. Safety protocols?" So-min leaned forward. 10,000 warships don't disappear because of safety protocols. "These ones did," said another voice from the doorway. Dr. Ji-woo entered the room carrying a tablet and looking slightly apologetic. "Sorry I'm late. I was just finishing up some atmospheric monitoring." She sat down and accepted a cup of tea from Dr. Yoon-soo. "The fleet you're asking about has been relocated to a safer location. They're perfectly fine, just experiencing a slightly different version of reality." "What does that mean?" Tae-hyun asked, feeling like he was trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing. "Well," Ji-woo said thoughtfully, stirring honey into her tea, "imagine you're reading a book, but suddenly you find yourself in a completely different book where the first book never existed. That's essentially what happened to your Draconian friends." The alien delegates looked at each other in confusion. These words didn't make sense in any language they knew. Dr. Yoon-soo noticed their confusion and tried to explain more simply. "Think of it as a very thorough relocation program. They're now in Universe Set Gamma 7, where they'll have plenty of empty space to explore without bothering anyone." "Universe Set what?" So-min's translator was struggling with the concepts. "Oh dear," Dr. Yoon-soo said gently. "Your species hasn't developed parallel universe technology yet, have you? That does make this conversation more difficult." "Lieutenant." Hee-jin's 3 eyes were darting back and forth between the 2 human women. These people were talking about impossible things, while sipping tea and eating cookies like it was the most normal conversation in the world. "Are you saying," Tae-hyun spoke slowly, "that you moved 10,000 warships to another universe." "Moved is such a harsh word," Ji-woo replied. "We prefer relocated for everyone's safety. Much more diplomatic, don't you think?" The room fell silent, except for the gentle ticking of a clock on the wall and the sound of ducks quacking outside. The window. The alien delegates sat in stunned silence, trying to process information that broke every rule of physics they thought they understood. Dr. Yun-soo refilled their teacups and offered the cookie plate again. "Please help yourselves, we have plenty of time to talk." The comfortable meeting room suddenly felt much smaller when Dr. Min-soo walked through the wall. Not through a door, through the solid concrete wall itself, like it was made of air. Commander So-min's security training kicked in, and she jumped to her feet, reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. "Please don't be alarmed," Dr. Min-soo said calmly, his body shimmering like heat waves rising from hot pavement. "I apologize for the dramatic entrance. Sometimes our dimensional anchors need adjustment." Captain Tae-hyun stared as the human's form seemed to flicker between solid and translucent. "What are you?" "I'm human," Min-soo replied, settling into a chair that appeared out of nowhere. "Just not the kind of human you've been observing." Dr. Ji-woo set down her teacup and sighed. "I suppose it's time for the full explanation. The humans you've encountered, the ones building rockets and broadcasting weather reports, they're volunteers." "Volunteers for what?" Lieutenant Hae-jin asked, all three of her eyes focused intently on the flickering human. "For maintaining the illusion," Dr. Yun-soo explained gently. "You see, our real civilization discovered how to move beyond normal space and time about 800 years ago. We learned to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, to travel between parallel universes, to manipulate reality at the quantum level." So-min felt her knees go weak. "That's impossible, is it?" Min-soo asked. "Your own scientists theorize about parallel dimensions. They just haven't figured out how to access them yet." The room fell silent, except for the soft humming of Min-soo's dimensional anchor, a sound like distant music that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Why pretend to be primitive?" Tae-hyun asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Ji-woo leaned forward. "Imagine you're walking through a forest and you come across an ant hill. The ants are building their little tunnels, gathering food, living their lives. Would you step on the anthill just because you could?" "Of course not," So-min answered automatically. "Exactly. Most species in this galaxy are still in their early development phase. You're learning to travel between stars, forming alliances, fighting wars. It's a natural part of growth. But if we revealed our true capabilities, it would completely disrupt that process." Min-soo's form solidified slightly as he focused his attention on the alien delegates. "Some species would worship us as gods. Others would demand our technology. Some would try to destroy us out of fear. None of those reactions would help anyone develop naturally." "So you watch us," Hae-jin said, her translator working overtime to process concepts her language had no words for. "Like scientists studying laboratory specimens. More like gardeners tending a garden," Dr. Yun-soo corrected gently. "We don't interfere unless absolutely necessary. The Draconian fleet forced our hand because they posed a genuine threat to several developing civilizations." Tae-hyun felt a chill run down his spine. "How long have you been watching us? Your species?" "About 3,000 years, Ji-woo replied casually. "You've made remarkable progress, sir. We're quite proud of how you've developed." The weight of that statement hit the alien delegates like a physical blow. Everything they thought they knew about human-alien relations was backwards. Humans weren't the newcomers stumbling into galactic politics. They were the ancient observers who had been cataloging and protecting younger species for millennia. "The Draconians," So-min managed to say. "What really happened to them?" Min-soo's expression grew serious. "They're alive and unharmed. We relocated them to a parallel universe, one where Earth never developed life. They'll find themselves in a galaxy with no other intelligent species to conquer or destroy." That's like a prison sentence," Hae-jin whispered. "It's rehabilitation," Dr. Yun-soo said firmly. "They'll have time to think about their choices without the ability to harm anyone else. Some of them might even learn to build instead of dester." "So, can they ever come back?" Tae-hyun asked. "When they're ready," Ji-woo answered. "We monitor all relocated species. If they show genuine change in their behavior patterns, we can discuss reintegration. Somin slumped in her chair as the full implications hit her. How many species know the truth? Very few, Minsu admitted. Most aren't ready for this level of revelation, but your investigation showed genuine scientific curiosity rather than aggressive intent. You've earned the right to know. The room seemed to spin around the alien delegates as they tried to process information that rewrote their understanding of the universe. They had come looking for evidence of a battle, and instead discovered that their entire civilization was being carefully guided by beings operating on levels they couldn't even comprehend. What happens now? Taehyun asked quietly. Dr. Yunsu smiled warmly. Now you go back to your people and help them grow. Continue exploring, learning, building. Just remember that Earth is under protection, and aggressive actions toward any developing species will be discouraged. And if we tell others about this conversation, Somin asked, who would believe you? Jiwoo replied with a gentle laugh. A species that can barely reach their nearest star system secretly controls dimensional technology. Most of your people will think you've been reading too much science fiction. The truth settled over them like a heavy blanket. They were gardeners. In a garden, watched over by gardeners they had never seen. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had never been so crowded. Representatives from over 200 species packed into the massive chamber on Nexus Prime, their voices creating a noise like 1,000 different storms all happening at once. Some were shouting, some were whispering frantically to their advisors, and others sat in stunned silence. Ambassador Krethar from the Vegan Alliance slammed her 4 fists on the table. This is ridiculous. You expect us to believe that primitive Earth humans have been secretly controlling galactic affairs for centuries. Commander Somin stood at the witness podium, her uniform still bearing the investigation unit insignia she had worn just weeks ago. Now she felt like she was standing in front of a firing squad made of angry politicians. I know how it sounds, she said, her voice carrying across the chamber through quantum translators. I didn't believe it either, but I've seen the evidence. I've spoken with them directly. Evidence that can be faked, shouted Chancellor Voxpim from the Rigid Systems Confederation. Holographic projections, staged demonstrations, clever tricks designed to make us afraid. The room erupted again in arguments and accusations. Somin waited for the noise to die down before continuing. The Draconian armada disappeared without a trace. 10,000 warships gone. No technology we know of could do that. Maybe the Draconians were destroyed by something else, suggested Ambassador Yilwen from the Outer Rim territories. A natural phenomenon we don't understand yet. Then explain this, Somin said, activating the holographic display behind her. The 3-dimensional map showed the galaxy as they all knew it, with trade routes and territorial boundaries marked in different colors. But now, scattered throughout the familiar star chart, hundreds of new markers appeared in bright blue. Each marker indicated a star system that had been labeled Human Research Territory, authorized personnel only. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the translator systems seemed to pause in shock. These systems were always marked as empty space on our charts, Somin continued. We assumed they contained nothing worth exploring. Now we know better. Elder Zumain from the Ancient Collective, whose species was among the oldest in known space, spoke in a voice like rustling leaves. Our deepest surveys showed no signs of civilization in those regions. Because they didn't want you to see them, Somin replied. Their technology operates beyond our ability to detect it. The silence stretched on until the massive chamber doors opened with a soft hiss. Dr. Taehyun walked in, looking exactly like any other human the delegates had seen before. He wore simple clothes, carried a basic tablet, and moved with the casual confidence of someone who wasn't afraid of anything in the room. But this Dr. Taehyun was different from Captain Taehyun, who had led the investigation. This one's eyes held depths that seemed to go on forever, like looking into space itself. Honored delegates, he said, his voice somehow reaching every corner of the massive chamber without any amplification. Thank you for inviting me to speak. Several species representatives started talking at once, but Dr. Taehyun raised his hand, and the room fell silent again. Not because of any technology or force, simply because something in his presence commanded respect. I understand your confusion and concern, he continued. For thousands of years you've seen humans as newcomers to galactic civilization. That was by design. We've found that younger species develop better when they aren't overwhelmed by the presence of more advanced beings. Chancellor Vox Pym stood up, his metallic body clanking as he moved. Younger species? You dare call us children? Not children, Dr. Tae-hyun replied patiently. Adolescents, perhaps. You've learned to travel between stars, to form alliances, to build great civilizations. These are remarkable achievements that took us much longer to accomplish when we were at your stage. What do you want from us? Asked Ambassador Krethar, her tone less hostile now, but still suspicious. Nothing, Dr. Tae-hyun said simply. We want you to continue growing, learning, exploring. We've always been here to make sure you have the space and time to do that safely. The room buzzed with quiet conversations as species representatives tried to process this information. Finally, Elder Zumain spoke again. The Draconian fleet. What happened to them exactly? They were relocated to a dimension where they can't harm developing civilizations, Dr. Tae-hyun explained. They're alive and well, just experiencing a universe with no other intelligent life to conquer. It gives them time to think about different ways to live. And if we refuse to accept this new arrangement, Chancellor Vox Pym asked. Dr. Tae-hyun's expression remained kind, but something shifted in his eyes. Then you'll be free to make that choice, but aggressive expansion toward protected worlds will activate automatic defensive systems, the same ones that handled the Draconian situation. The implication hung in the air like a storm cloud. Every species in the room suddenly understood that they had been living in a carefully maintained garden, protected by gardeners they had never seen. Commander Somin watched from the witness stand as representatives from dozens of worlds began, requesting private meetings with Dr. Tae-hyun. Her own government had already assigned her as the official liaison to Earth, making her one of the most important diplomats in the galaxy overnight. The age of thinking humans were primitive was over. The age of understanding their true place in the cosmic order had begun.